Some things seem to be eternal, like a batchy in the morning or the smell of coffee in the kitchen. But there is something else. It is trust. Especially when you share it with someone you've known for half a century. I thought that such things don't break. And then it broke. Without a bang, without warning. It just disappeared. My name is Dennis Malone. The story begins in 1963. That was the first time I saw Richie Harmond, a guy with a red baseball cap, chewing gum in math class and answering the teacher like an old gypsy. And there was something attractive about that cheekiness. We became friends right away. And I'm sorry we didn't become friends, we became brothers. That's what they called us, the two from hell. We fought together, stole apples from Mrs. Mason's farm together, and swore together that we would never betray each other. We lived in the town of Gastonia, North Carolina. A small place where everyone knew everyone else, and where the world seemed bigger only on TV. And we grew up with the sound of the TV playing Wheel of Fortune and the smell of gasoline because almost every one of our parents worked in an auto repair shop or factory. When I turned 20, I married Sandra. And Richie said, "Brother, this is either the best decision of your life or the end of our freedom. We'll see." He was my witness, and I was his a year later. His marriage did not last 2 years. Mine lasted longer, almost until I retired. But Richie and I did not separate. We worked at the same steel mill. It was hard work, hot work. You wake up and your hands shake. When you fall asleep, you hear ringing in your ears. But we kept going because we knew that the day would come when we would be able to retire. And then we would rest. We played dominoes every week. We knew who had saved how much. We discussed who caught what fish and where the best bait was. We lived like two old wolves who had long ago found their pack. But even then, in those calm days, there were things I ignored. For example, when Richie said, I could make 3 times as much money if I wanted to. Or when he disappeared once a year and came back with new shoes and a watch, I'd ask, "Where were you?" "At the..." And he would laugh. "At my grandmother's in Texas, helping with the housework." I didn't look into it at the time, because, well, he was a brother. If you've known a person for 50 years, it's like a part of the body. Whether you don't ask where your liver comes from, it's just there, and it's yours. But something in me, even then, gave a signal. A small, faint ringing like in those old alarm clocks, the kind you want to turn off, but are afraid that you will sleep for the rest of your life. I'm sitting in the kitchen now, drinking coffee, and I can still hear Richie talking. This is a win-win investment, Dan. I wouldn't advise you if I wasn't sure. And I believed him, because we are brothers. I lost everything not when the account was zeroed out. It was when I realized that Richie knew what he was doing, and he did it on purpose. But the story is only just beginning, because trust is not just a word. It is a currency. And when you're cheated out of $1, you get angry. And when you've been cheated out of your trust, you burn from the inside. And that fire does not go out for a long time. Consequences. I didn't know then that this fire would be the only thing would stay with me in the car overnight. You know how it is. You live your life, make your morning coffee, think about retirement and garage repairs, and then bang a call that turns everything upside down. In my case, it was Richie. His voice on the phone sounded like it was coming from a pit low, confident, and sweet.
Dan.
"Too sweet," he said. "I wouldn't have called if it wasn't really important. There's a story. A real one. And I want you to be in on it with me." I was standing there in my bathrobe, with a sandwich in my hand, and I hadn't yet realized that this phrase would be the beginning of the end. It's a solid investment. Richie continued. "A private healthcare startup in Florida." "A startup? Dan, have you heard of it?" It's a fancy word, but the idea is simple. You invest, they sign you up as a partner, and then it's all profit. All the doctors there are young, smart, and have connections with pharmacists. The idea is to provide services to pensioners directly, without insurance companies. It's a trend. People are now looking for workarounds because health insurance eats into pensions. I was listening, nodding, but I was already feeling anxious inside. Because when someone uses the word trend in a conversation with a pensioner, it usually means one thing: you're about to get ripped off. How much do I have to invest? I asked, trying to sound as if I wasn't worried. But you will get the status of co-owner. We will earn 3 times as much in the first year. I've already invested. You can transfer it to me and I'll send it on through my man. It's more reliable. This was the moment when he played the strings. Dan, I couldn't help but share this with you. We are like brothers. And I thought, why should I have to deal with this alone if I can share it with someone I trust? Then I thought about Sandra. She always said, don't get involved where you can't see the end. But Sandra was gone. She died 5 years ago. And I was left alone with that advice in my head, which now sounded quiet, almost like a whisper. You know, when you get older, it's not death that you're afraid of. You are afraid that you will be left behind. That the world will move on and you won't. And when Richie said, startup, I suddenly felt young, like I could still start something. 3 days later, I went to the bank. I withdrew everything I had in my retirement account. You owe me a $50,000. Not such an outer space amount if you think about it. Enough to buy a good TV, renovate the kitchen, and have enough left over for the funeral. Or for something new. I transferred the money. Through his account, as he asked. And I felt that was it. It was a jump without a parachute. But I didn't know where I was going yet. A week later, Richie wrote that everything was ready. The documents were in the works. The deal was being finalized. He sent some screenshots with names, signs, even a website. The site looked professional. I even called the number and a girl answered, saying that I was on the list of partners. She congratulated me. I felt like I was back in the game. I'm not just a pensioner counting change in a pharmacy. I am a businessman. But something was wrong. I didn't know what it was. Just a feeling. Like a pimple that seems invisible, but it itches and you scratch it until it gets worse. And then the day came when I called Richie and he didn't pick up. And then another day. And then another day. And when I went to the address where the startup's office was supposed to be, I saw only a sign that said, for rent. And that's when I realized that I had just given everything I had to a person I had known all my life. They say money doesn't bring happiness. But try telling that to someone who has just lost everything they've been saving for half their life. Or better yet, say it when the person you trusted with the last thing is posting pictures from a yacht in Miami. I was sitting in the kitchen with the newspaper. I wasn't reading, just looking at the letters. The silence was so loud that my ears were ringing. The phone was silent for the 3rd day. I didn't sleep well. I dreamt of Richie, laughing, raising a glass of champagne, saying, "This is business, Dan. Business." I knew where he was. Social media was still working, where there he was, wearing a white shirt with a girl in her 20s under a palm tree, holding a cocktail that looked a little umbrella of alcohol. How dare he? We went through so much with him. The army, a wedding, divorce, the funeral, everything. And it is difficult to convey in words what it feels like when a knife is stabbed into your chest, not by an enemy, not by someone else, but by your own. A close one, like a brother. I started digging. I searched for his friends, his ex-wife, even his brother, with whom he had a fight back in the 90s. Everyone said the same thing. We haven't seen him for a long time. And if we have, he's not the same person he used to be. But he was different with me, wasn't he? He couldn't. Hell, yes, he could. I let it happen myself. I went to the police. I opened a case. They gave me a printout with a bunch of ticks and stamps and told me to wait. I knew they would do nothing. Because there was no contract, everything was in words. I transferred the money myself. Voluntarily. You're not an idiot. The young cop told me. You just believed the wrong person. I returned home. I sat down on the bed. I looked at my old TV, at the faded curtains, at the pile of letters from the bank. and I thought, was it worth it? It was not just a loss of money. It was a loss of trust, of hope, and self-respect. Meanwhile, Richie continued to live his dream life. New photos, and now he is in Los Angeles, some parties, white Jeeps, luxury coffee. Caption to the photo, work smarter, not harder. I smashed my cup when I saw it. For the first time in 30 years, I threw something at the wall. And not because the cup was cheap. It was because everything inside had been cracking for a long time. It was just the last straw. I sat there and asked myself, why me? Why him? How could he change like that? And then I realized that he hadn't changed. He just didn't hide who he really was anymore. And me. I was still trying to be decent. And what did I get out of it? My pension is gone. I have zero money. Hope is in the red. I went to look for a job. At the age of 65. They don't take me to the factory. My health is not good. In a store, too slow. As a courier, too much running. The only thing I managed to do was to work as a parking lot attendant for the night shift. It's minimum wage, but it's something. I feel as if life has gone full speed ahead without me, and I'm running after it in slippers on the ice. The irony is that I always dreamed of a quiet retirement. To travel a little, go fishing, play with my grandchildren. But now I don't have a fishing chair because I pawned it. And I see my grandchildren only on the screen. They are in another state. And instead of fishing, I sleep on a plastic chair in the guard's booth. But something in me wouldn't let me just accept it. I started thinking maybe this blow was not the end, but the beginning. Maybe I'm still here for a reason. Because if life wanted to write me off, it would have done so long ago. One morning I received a message from an unknown number. I owe only 2 words. He is not alone. I looked at the screen and couldn't believe it. What did it mean? Who was writing? Who was it about? I had the same itch again, something was coming. And this time, I'm not going to sit there and be silent. What do you do when not just a person disappears, but your entire past, future, and even your faith in yourself? And even worse, when you start to doubt whether it is really a disappearance, or just a new form of betrayal. Those 2 words, he's not alone, chewed on my mind for days. I woke up at night, wondering who could have sent it and what it meant. I called back, or the number was disconnected. I wrote, 0 response. There was only one thing going through my minding: if he was not alone, how many were there? And who were these? They. I went online. The old, slow laptop was humming like a tractor, but it pulled. I went through all of Richie's profiles, looked at who he was photographed with, who liked him, who commented. And I found a couple of new faces. One was a young guy wearing a jacket a size too big, some kind of Eddie. The other is a woman named May, a fitness trainer from Vegas. Everyone is in the photo with him, all with smiles, just like in the advertising brochure. I took screenshots. Then I went deeper. A forum about investment schemes. I wrote a story there, changing the names. And their responses poured in. It turned out I wasn't the only one. An old man from Texas lost his house. A woman from Michigan lost her store. All of them knew Richie under a different name. Somewhere he was Daniel, somewhere he was Michael, somewhere he was Jacob. But the pattern was the same: promises, friendship, investment, disappearance. My hands were shaking. This was not just a friend's betrayal. This is a well-organized scam. And I am just one of the bricks in this pyramid. The police came again. He brought everything: screenshots, names, addresses, even a printout from the forum. This time it was a different officer, older, with gray hair. He listened more attentively, but finally said, "This is a federal case. If he escaped across the border, it's even more complicated. But we will pass on the materials." We will? We will? And what am I supposed to do? Sit and wait for another 6 months for someone to think about it? I decided to act on my own. I wrote to that man from Texas. Then to a woman from Michigan. We got in touch. We exchanged information. They were as devastated as I was, but they had no anger or desire for revenge. I, on the other hand, was on fire. I couldn't just forget. Richie was nowhere to be found. His social media went silent. His last post was a photo of a cocktail and the caption, "Finally, freedom." And that was it. No activity. Even those who liked him suddenly disappeared. Their accounts were deleted or frozen. Who like ghosts who had done their job and vanished. I began to suspect the worst. Maybe he was removed. Maybe those with whom he had been doing business had decided that they no longer needed him. Now, one evening when I was leaving the store, I was called out. A young man with a backpack, thin, with tired eyes. "Are you Dan? And who are you?" "I'm May's brother, the one Richie was with." My heart beat faster. She's a victim too. She thought they were building a business together, and when she found out the truth, she disappeared. We haven't been able to find her for a week. He looked at me, sincerely, without theater. "He's dangerous. If he knows you're digging for something, you have to be careful." These words went through me like frost. I thought it couldn't get any worse. But now there is a threat, a real one. I realized that I was getting into something dark, onto something that is not about money, but about power, control, maybe even a crime. I began to doubt. Maybe I should stop, to live as it is, to forget. But that's not me. I'm not the type to hide. I went through Vietnam. I survived the death of my parents, my divorce. I will not give up on someone who stole not only my money but my life. There was an envelope waiting for me at home. It had no return address. Inside was a photo. Acoma fit was black and white. It showed me at the kiosk where I get coffee every morning. The photo was taken a couple of days ago. The caption at the bottom reads, "Stop before it's too late." I was sitting in a dark room with this photo in my hands. My body felt like cotton wool, my head was boiling. Disappearances are not just about Richie. It's about me, and I could be the next one to go missing. But what if this is just the beginning? What if there's not just one crook around, but a whole network? And what if I'm already on their lists? When the enemy is invisible, every shadow seems like a threat. But the biggest danger is when you start to fear yourself. I woke up with a heavy head, a night without sleep, a photo with the caption, "Stop before it's too late," in front of my eyes. Though a fear was not hysterical, it became cold, silent, crawling under my skin into my very gut. I made coffee on the vending machine without even checking if there was milk. Only then did I remember, what if they were already listening to me? Cameras. Bugs. Is this paranoia? Or just common sense? I went from room to room, checking windows, doors, sockets. It may be funny, but I even took off the back cover of the TV remote control. There was nothing. Although, maybe that was the trap to make me think that everything was fine. I sat down on the living room floor. Somehow, I used to think that in old age there would be peace. Maybe not happiness, but at least stability. And now, I've lost a friend. My pension money has disappeared. And it seems that someone is watching me. I decided to call my daughter. We are not very close after the divorce from her mother. The connection was, formal. She lives in Florida, teaches at a college. "Dad, are you okay?" "No. What happened?" I didn't say anything. How do I explain it to her? That an old fool got caught and is now sitting there holding a threatening photo. I wanted to hear your voice. She fell silent. Then she said, "If something is wrong, tell me. And I'm not a little girl." And then it hit me. Shame? The despair, and that sad laugh that comes out when there's nothing left. "I'm in trouble, Amy. I'm in trouble, Amy. But I can't tell you everything yet." Not yet. When you get older, trust becomes a luxury. You see everyone around you through the prism of what they've been through. You are no longer naive. But this is the tragedy, because even when you need to rely on someone, you can't. Because you have already been there. You've already been burned. In the evening, a man from the forum, the one from Texas whom Richie had also deceived, called me. It seems that one of his friends is active in a cryptocurrency chat room. He's advertising a reliable investment vehicle. Sound familiar? I could hardly stop myself from cursing. Name? He's there as Wolf 77. But the photo is the same as the one in your collection. The guy with the jacket, that was something. A little crack in the darkness. I registered on that chat room. I logged in under the name Old Dog. I started a conversation. Hi, and tell me, is it true that you have a guaranteed return? Yes. If you are interested, write to me in private. I did. We corresponded for an hour. He didn't know who I was. But the style was familiar. The same way of luring, and then he promises. Gentle pressure, and not a word of specifics. I was sitting in front of the monitor and suddenly felt that this was it. I don't know who I am anymore. The man who used to build houses, and who used to play baseball with his neighbors, who held my wife's hand while she had a tumor removed, and now I'm sitting here pretending to be interested in a fraudulent scheme. Is this life? Have I become the one I've been fighting against all my life? Or am I just trying to save myself? And is it possible to escape at all when you've already been marked? Because after the threat, I started seeing suspicious faces, on the bus, in the bread line, or is this already madness? I didn't sleep again. I was lying on the couch, listening to the water flowing from the kitchen tap. It was dripping a little. And in every drip, I heard myself, confused, lonely. I had an idea to turn to the press, to television. But this is publicity, it's a danger. And yet, if you keep quiet, they win. I pressed save chat. And I wrote a messaging, I have everything. If I disappear, it will be your fault. I sent it, then I exhaled, and I realized that I was no longer a victim. But I'm not a vigilante either. I'm just a confused old man looking for a way out. The past always leaves debts. Sometimes they can be paid. But more often, they come for us when we are weakest. The next morning I woke up to a dull knock on the front door. My heart jumped out of my chest. Every sound seemed like an alarm. But it was the postman. It was just a letter. My name was on the envelope in uneven handwriting. The sender was not indicated. I tore the paper carefully as if it were a bomb. And I came across a photo, an old one from the 90s. Richie and I are fishing. We are smiling, holding fishing rods. On the back is a note and felt tip pang. You owe me more than money, Dan. This shot hit me harder than I wanted to admit. And at the time, Richie and I lived in a trailer on the lake for a week. No women, no kids, no noise. Just two friends. That was the first time I told him about my fear of old age. You don't have to do it alone, he said. I'm here if you need me, but I did. Because I didn't know how to do anything else. That same day, sometime in the afternoon, a woman called. Her voice was recognizable, but distant. Dan, it's Betty. Do you remember me? I sat up. I did. Betty was a friend of my wife's. We hadn't seen each other in over 20 years after the divorce. I don't want to get into your business, but Rishi, he used to borrow money from me. A lot of it. What project? He said you were opening a studio, that you had agreed to it. I gave him $40,000. And now he's gone. My breath caught in my throat. I had never heard of any workshop, and I definitely didn't agree to it. So he was taking money under my name, even from his old acquaintances. This is not just betrayal. This is using someone else's reputation as a tool. And I began to remember how he spoke to me, how he often avoided direct answers, how he asked me to sign papers, just for the sake of order. I was digging through old emails, looking for those documents. And I found one file that I hadn't noticed before, a scan of a contract. My name was there, and my signature. Only it wasn't my handwriting. I compared it with another document, and I saw that the handwriting was different. The signature was forged. It was a punch in the face. I always believed that Richie was cunning, but not a criminal. And now he has become someone else. A shadow of the man I used to know. And this shadow was spreading not only over my life, but over the lives of others. I went to a local lawyer. She was 45 years old, stern, with short hair and a confident look. You need to officially report the fraud. Forgery is a criminal offense. But he's my friend. He was. She shrugged. Do you want to feel sorry for him or protect yourself? That was the hardest part. Not to sue, but to admit to myself that this was the end of the friendship, that there would be no excuses. Maybe he was wrong. Everything will be resolved. The old debts came back, and I couldn't run away anymore. I sat in front of the mirror and looked at myself. This look, it was different, like a man who suddenly realized that his kindness had become poison. I signed the statement. She went to the police. I left a copy of the agreement there. If anything happens, here's my contact number, the lawyer said, and one more thing, don't go out alone. People who work like this don't always act honestly. I came home and saw a box under the door. A small box. White. No inscriptions. I opened it and there was an old gambling chip from Vegas. And a noting, you are a player. But now the stakes are different. I broke out in a cold sweat. This is not just the past anymore. This is a game where I don't even know the rules. When your closest one betrays you, you retreat at first. But then, you start hunting. Not for revenge, but for answers. The next day I woke up not to a call or a letter, but to silence, and a too deep a silence that seemed to scream. Something is wrong. Someone had carved a knife on my mailbox. You're next. No name, no explanation. Just this inscription and an icy chill on my back. Oh, I was no longer the same knave pensioner. Something clicked in me. I was not running away, I was going to go on the offensive. I turned on my old laptop, logged into my email account, got all those messages, checks, screenshots. And I created a separate folder called Richie. And I started to put together a puzzle. One message stood out. It was sent on behalf of some mutual acquaintance. There was a link to an old forum about cryptocurrency, and I clicked on it, and there was a profile with the nickname SilverWolf66. There was a photo in the profile. Richie. 10 years younger, but with the same cocky look. You are the signature read? Invest with me and your pension will work for you. And I realized it wasn't just a scam on me. It was a scheme. A big one. It was massive. And I wasn't the only one. I turned to Betty. She was again reserved, but this time she was angry. If he fooled me and you, then maybe there are other people. There are 4 other people. One of them is a veteran. He gave Richie $80,000. We need to team up. You want to nail him. Or I want to find out where he is. We created a chat room. We called it the Hunters. We found 2 more people, Donna and Jerry. They were retired just like us, from different states, but with the same hardtack. And Donna's a former accountant. She found out that SilverWolf66 transactions on a cryptocurrency exchange registered in Las Vegas, where Richie and I used to hang out in the evenings. I decided to fly, by myself, without warning. Betty gave me a contact, her niece, who worked at the casino. She promised to let me know if she saw anyone who looked like my friend. I arrived in Vegas with a small suitcase and a big anxious feeling. When you're old, you have an advantage, you don't get noticed. I was sitting by the slot machines, drinking coffee and just watching. And then, I saw him. Richie, with a young woman, wearing an expensive jacket. He was laughing. He looked happy. And inside me, something was boiling. Not with anger, but with bitter resentment. I did not approach him. I just followed him when they left. He was walking to the hotel. I stopped around the corner. I waited. And when he came back alone, I stepped out of the shadows. Hey, buddy. He froze. Dan, you. On vacation. Or no, I'm hunting. And I think I've already found my prey. You've got it all wrong. I've got one thing figured out. You used my name, forged my signature, stole from me and others. That's not true. I was going to return it. Then return it, right now. Otherwise, I'll tell the police. And also to your new girlfriend. How does she feel about crooks, by the way? He started to back away. You don't understand, Dan. There are other people involved. I'm just a part of it. If I give them the money, they'll kill me. And you thought your lies had no price. He took off running. I didn't pursue him. I already had the main thing confirmation. His face, his words. I filmed everything on my phone camera. In my room, I watched the video over and over again. And suddenly I received a message on my phone. The number was unknown. If you think this is the end, you don't know who you're talking to. The hunt had just begun. When life puts you in front of a choice to break or to go on your pension, age and past cease to matter. Because the main thing at stake is dignity. I woke up not in my bed, not at home, and not in peace. A hotel room, the smell of someone else's laundry, and that message in my head. If you think this is the end, you don't know who you're dealing with. Richie is no longer just a friend who betrayed me. And he's part of something bigger, something dangerous. And I'm a pensioner with a phone, a few contacts, and righteous anger. And yet I was not going to give up. I had two options. The first one was to go to the police, turn Richie in, show the video, and make a scandal. The second was to quietly retreat, accept it, move on, forget it like a bad dream. Betty wrote every hour. She insisted on the police. Jerry wanted a manly solution. Donna was silent, as she always was before a storm. And I sat there, holding my old wallet, remembering how Richie and I had sworn as children. We're not going to rat each other out. Never. In the mirror was the face of an old man. Rays under the eyes, a few new wrinkles, but the look is clear. I asked myself aloud, if not me, then who? If not now, then when? I decided, no forgiveness, no revenge. When I'm just to finish the job. When I returned to my town, I gathered the hunters. In the coffee shop we chose as our headquarters. We have evidence, we have testimonies, and we have a chance. But it will not be the second. We are being warned. We're being intimidated. So what do you suggest? Betty leaned in toward me. Either we turn this over to the police and risk having it all blown up. Or we do it differently. Differently. How? Jerry narrowed his eyes. Benoit. We find others who have been affected. We bring the story into the public domain. Through the media, social media. We're not just exposing Richie. We are bringing down the whole scheme. Donna finally spoke up. What if this attracts the attention of those behind him? What if we're really in danger? We already are. We're already in the game. Betty stood up, looked around, and said firmly, I'm in. I've already been robbed. Now let them be afraid. Jerry smiled. Donna sighed. Everyone agreed. We turned to a local journalist, Julianne Hanks. She wrote a blog called True Stories of Ordinary People. After we showed her the video and documents, she was silent at first. And then she said, this will break the internet. But you have to be prepared. This is not just about fraud. It's about influence, money, big names. We were ready. She published the story 2 days later. The headline was simply, How My Best Friend Stole My Passion and Dozens of Others. Hundreds of comments. Mailboxes were bursting with letters. Dozens of people wrote, also invested through Silverwolf 66. I was also scammed. This Richie is the devil. But among all this, there was one more message. From an anonymous account. Haven't you had enough yet? Some people don't know when to stop. See you very soon. I was faced with a choice again, to get scared and give up, or continue despite the threats. When I went out on the veranda, sat in a rocking chair, watched the sunset and thought about everyone who still believes in friendship, trust, and humanity. And then I answered, I am waiting. But this time I will be ready. While it was getting dark outside, the silhouette of a man was reflected in the window. Not an acquaintance, not Richie. I got up, but there was no one there. This is no longer just a story about money. It's about survival. Sometimes forgiveness means giving away the last thing you have left, dignity, truth, self-respect. But what if forgiveness is not an option? I was woken up by the doorbell. The sunlight had just peeked through the curtains, and someone was already standing on the doorstep. It was Julian, the journalist who had published the story. We're in trouble, she said, without foreplay. Lawyers. Threats. They say you're lying. They want everything removed. And what are you going to do? I'll leave it. But, my friend, get ready. It won't be easy. I nodded silently. I already had a plan in mind. If they are moving to official steps, it means they are afraid. That means we are close. In the afternoon, Jerry arrived. He brought copies of some other papers he had found among the old documents, investment schemes, signatures, familiar initials. C. He showed me one of the sheets. It's a laundry. They were hiding money through us. The pensioners. Acua the gullible. My throat went dry. This whole story was deeper than I thought. I texted Richie. It was short. We can stop this. Just tell the truth. And he wrote back. 3 minutes later. You don't realize what you've gotten yourself into. Do you think this is about me? I'm the one being held by the throat. Don't call me anymore. It wasn't him. Or rather, not the Richie I knew. In the evening, I met Donna on a bench near the old park. She was smoking something long forgotten with a subtle clove flavor. Do you still want to go through with it? She didn't look at me. Yes. Then forget about forgiving. Forget about justifying. This man has destroyed your life. Mine too. I just want the truth to come out. And the truth isn't always light, you know. Sometimes it's darkness that you have to carry on. I remember the first time I had a fight with Richie. We were about 20 at the time. It was over a girl. We didn't speak for 2 months, and then he showed up with a 6-pack of beer and said, "You're my family, man. And you don't change your family. And now, like this, after all these years. After my wife's funeral, when he was holding my hand, I couldn't forgive him, even if I wanted to. Julianne and I went to the firm that represented Richie. Their representative was young, predatory, with a gleam in his teeth and a hollow in his eye. Mr. Harold, you realize you're putting our client in a false light. I'm putting the truth out there. If your client is innocent, then let him prove it in court. You're playing with fire. And I'm already burned. I have nothing to lose now." We left, leaving behind silent glances. The next day, there was an envelope in my mailbox. There was no return address. Inside was a photograph. Richie and I were fishing. We are smiling, still young. And on the back was an inscription. We were brothers. But you chose war. And for the first time in all that time, I was scared. Not for myself, and for the part of me that still believed that he could be brought back. I was sitting by the fireplace in the evening. The fire was crackling as if it were alive, and I asked myself, if it is impossible to forgive, is it necessary to take revenge? Or maybe the greatest punishment is to live knowing that you have been exposed, that you are no longer a hero, but a thief in someone's eyes. But there was no answer. At 3 a.m, the phone rang. The voice on the phone was quiet. "Horsig, Richie's gone. He's disappeared. They can't find him." And then the beeps. "Everything is just beginning, and there will be no more forgiveness. He's gone. He just vanished into thin air, like smoke after a fire." But if you think that the end of a story is silence, then you haven't lived in the real world. Here, endings are fragile. They are never final. Richie disappeared. The police reported that he did not show up at home or at work. His phone was turned off, and his car was parked in a motel parking lot in Arizona. No trace of him. No cameras, no tickets, no direction. Maybe it's a getaway, Donna said. Or maybe someone took him out. He crossed the wrong road. This isn't about money anymore. It's gone deeper than that, stinky. Silent, like a swamp that sucks you in. I met with Jerry. He asked me not to come to his house. We sat in a cheap bar that smelled of old grease and sadness. "I saw something. Harold," he said. "Documents that disappeared. Stories, people we've never heard of. It wasn't just Richie. Apasu, he was just a cog. Who's the engine? That's the question. And I'm afraid we're not going to like the answer." I went back to our old house. The place where Richie and I grew up, where we played baseball by the garage, where he once saved me from a bull when we snuck onto Mr. Holmes' farm. I stood in the yard and stared at the empty window. The memories hurt. Not like a wound, but like a phantom pain, something that is no longer there, but it still tugs at you from the inside. I forgave him at that moment. Not because he deserved it, but because I couldn't carry it all inside me anymore. I submitted everything I had. All the documents, records, letters, even that photo with the signature. The policeman, an old man with a weathered face, asked me, "D, why are you doing all this?" Because the truth is the last thing left, and I have no money, no family, no Richie. But I have the truth, and as long as I breathe, it will live. That night I made myself dinner, eggs with bacon and beans, just like in the old days. I turned on some music, some country, some blues. And I sat on the veranda with a glass of beer, looking at the stars, and for the first time in many months, I felt something like peace. Not happiness, not hope, just silence. Sometimes that's enough. By the next morning, there was a letter in the mailbox. My name is Miles. I used to work with Richie. He didn't want you to know, but he tried to save you. Not everything was as it seems. If you want to know the truth, meet me in Phoenix. No, Tuesday. Don't trust anyone. No signature, just coordinates. I haven't decided whether to go yet. I don't know if it's an answer or a trap. Maybe it's another lie. Maybe a bullet. Or maybe the truth. I sit with my suitcase by the door. The dog is looking at me, tilting his head. He is waiting. And I am waiting, because stories never end. They just change pace. What if Richie comes back? What if he's not the same person he was? What if I don't know who I am anymore? It was a story about trust. About betrayal. About growing old, which turned out to be worse than we thought. About how one step can cost you everything. And how, even after everything, we are still looking for the light. If you want a somewhere in the end. If you want to know what happens next, subscribe to the channel, because the next story is already waiting. And believe me, it's closer than you think. On all the broke, although my lifelong friends, betrayal cost me my retirement funds, the broken bond. My lifelong friends, betrayal cost me my retirement funds. Impantequida momnientamet pietogokench inkodongo tagpu no chavogo the tata utaja kokwe monsividu libato quiti. On aso you to tontapu demago gentanav panakan elzanatate. And ek nuno nu wakandua maka no wooden motu a fan cove. Imana zumga da guandu do good gineka dambo nam din you the dadu lugo jutwa da gono to toilet down do luda jewu jin no no mo zu jing and a little quite tunjung to tisan go yi budo wugo te chalo zu no gongu ruo do jen jai tinian du lama geng wei do. America when I'm a kono wazo don't come out on a boy what I moved in that commando a you come the volano I with the punyan chanquo. Anako, the story tells of Dennis Malone, a retired North Carolina man who worked in a steel mill all his life. His best friend from childhood, Richie Harmond, convinced him to invest his retirement savings in a guaranteed fund with a high yield. But a year after he retired, the fund disappeared along with his money. Dennis was left without a roof, trust, or hope, and had to rebuild his life from scratch.